legislators today.
Are you
When
ready?
you guys are ready.
We're ready.
We're ready.
Good afternoon, state legislators. I appreciate such an opportunity to stand before you, and I thank you for your willingness to listen to us. My name is Ray S. Parks Jr., and I am part of the deaf community in the state of New York, whose concerns are in regard to Governor Andrew Cuomo's proposal to slash funding to 11 schools for the deaf, blind, and severely disabled, known as the 4201 Schools Association, by transferring the direct funding responsibilities from the state to school districts. Also, the proposal would allow school districts to determine how and where deaf students are educated. Such action could easily lead to closing down 4201 schools and shifting affected students to the public schools in the state. Governor Cuomo thought the state would save close to $100 million by implementing such procedures, to which we are strongly opposed. Under the governor's budget, the state would depend on local districts to front the money to fund the schools. The state would then partly reimburse the districts. We strongly believe that that would not be achieved successfully due to the fact that many school districts are in a deep financial crunch, thus being unable to cover educational needs of 15,000 students. Such inabilities to successfully fund the 4201 schools would place the schools in a severe financial situation, which would compel them to close down, displacing them at public schools without proper educational resources for those children. The 4201 schools are much better qualified to identify and meet the special needs of those students. As for the education of the deaf, all of the teachers teaching at the schools for the deaf are highly qualified and certified. Public schools do not have the resources, qualified teachers, and support service personnel that the 4201 schools can offer. Governor Cuomo would face the reality that it would cost the state much more than $100 million due to the total cost of smaller and fragmented programs at district schools. In regard to Mr. Megan's error in his calculation of the average tuition, he did not include the cost of services rendered by support service personnel and interpreters at public schools, which would easily run way above $93,000 per deaf student attending schools for the deaf. Schools for the deaf already have those comprehensive educational resources. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, with his intelligent insight into educational and budgetary efficiencies, noted the high cost of fragmented programs for deaf children and blind children attending district schools. He felt that having deaf students attend the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind would keep the cost down, and that SFDB would be the best facility to educate its deaf and blind children. How right he has been. FSDB, once experiencing the dwindling of student enrollment, currently has around 800 deaf students and 150 blind students. Regarding the philosophy of inclusion in education, many disabled, other than deaf, children who are deaf, children are successfully mainstreamed into regular classes. Inclusion is working successfully for those children using the same communication modality. However, in the area of deaf education, such philosophy of inclusion in public schools does not work very well for deaf students, as well as deaf students with additional disabilities, due to the difference in communication modality. Research at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf in Rochester suggests that even with qualified interpreters, educators need to understand that deaf children learn differently, are more visual, and often process information differently than their hearing peers. Dr. Mark Marshark, professor and director of NTID's Center for Education Research Partnerships, says, quote, "The mainstream as it exists now is not necessarily the best place for many deaf students. Sure, a kid doing okay in the mainstream will stay there, but he could be a star in another setting. The status quo is not good enough." We are asking for your support in not accepting Governor Cuomo's proposal. Many of us deaf people have been most thankful that we have attended schools for the deaf, where we learned many educational and vocational schools that we needed to be successful in the working world. Many thanks for the time you've given to listening to us today.